As we enter into a new year and with a lot of hopes towards being able to get back on track with a lot of our goals and the things that we're going after in 2021, after being on hold for so long with 2020 and the pandemic setting in, I wanted to talk more today about the motivations behind our goals. Goal setting and resolutions are always a great thing in the new year for a lot of us because we just like that threshold into the new year. It kind of helps to make it seem like it's more important. I don't think that really the transition between one year to the next is the be all end all of goal setting. If you have a goal, you should set it and get after it whenever it's relevant to you. But for a lot of us, this time of year is when we do set new goals and seek to make improvements in that way. But as we all know, the vast majority of resolutions and goals set at the beginning of a new year often get lost very quickly. By the end of the first month or the first 6 weeks, most people are no longer pursuing those goals. What happens is, I think in a lot of cases, we set a rather arbitrary goal, something that everybody else is kind of doing, and don't really think about the motivations behind it. And some people say that motivation is overrated. We should turn to things like our tribe, those groups and people that can hold us accountable. And accountability definitely is a key way that we can get towards those goals that maybe are a little more challenging or not as relevant to what we necessarily want to pursue. But another way to look at it is intrinsic versus extrinsic motivations. And the more that we can start to shift towards those things that we truly desire, those things that are intrinsic to us and that we also have a lot of passion towards, that's going to really help us with the goals that we are pursuing, whether they are outcome-based or process-based goals. Whatever we're going after, it really helps if you've got that desire, you've got that passion to keep going through for the long term, because that's really what long-term motivation is all about. It's about having that desire. It's about starting to find that passion so that we can persist and persevere over the long term. Because as we know, Angela Duckworth's work on grit and resilience, it's really important that we pursue goals much longer often than we even expect them to be. I know one of the quotes that a lot of people like to throw around, as often attributed to Tony Robbins, but other people say it at different lengths, is we often overestimate what we can achieve in 1 year, but underestimate what we achieve in 5 years. Or you could say 3 years. It doesn't really matter the length of the time. It's more the point being that it's long-term goals that really get us to those higher peaks that we are after. So passion and desire for whatever goals you have set is really critical to that long-term motivation. And because it shifts it towards intrinsic, we often get more pleasure and actually more flow out of the experience short term or in the present moment when we are engaged in that process. When we are doing those daily tasks or doing those daily systems goals that get us towards more of that long-term outcome, we can find more flow in those states because of the intrinsic motivation. We know that those types of situations and intrinsic motivation is really a key driver of the focus that gets us into flow states. So that's a key component of why we want to shift towards more intrinsic motivation and not be so much forced by external factors, even if it is something like an accountability group or an accountability buddy, somebody that's helping you along the way, or if you've hired somebody or you've put money as a stake towards getting after a goal that maybe doesn't completely resonate with you intrinsically. So the next thing I want to sort of mention along the lines of this is that it's also very important to, as best as possible, align whatever the outcome goal is with those things that you do find to be intrinsically motivating or help to produce more of that autotelic experience. So for example, very often it's either the nutrition, like the diets that people set in the new year, or it's got to do with our fitness plans and our goals. Maybe you want to start running, especially with lockdown pandemic situations. It's hard to set a goal to get to the gym, but you could also start a home workout program. The trouble with these types of goals is often if we don't love the activities themselves, it just becomes such a burden and such a slog to try to keep going through on a daily basis and follow that system and routine that's so critical to the long-term outcome. And even if you are doing it and forcing yourself through it on a daily basis, it's not really going to stick long-term as a habit and a new part of your behavior and new part of your identity in a lot of ways if you really dislike it. It just doesn't align with your values, it doesn't align with your character, and it doesn't align with the things that you truly enjoy doing. So at the end of the day, discipline can only get us so far before that willpower effect starts to burn out on us and we fall back to whatever our base instincts are. And so because we want to find goals that are meaningful to us, that are intrinsically motivated, and that can help us keep pursuing them long term, really the main takeaway is that you want to really spend some time with this. Passions don't evolve overnight. We don't jump into things and say, oh, I'm super passionate about that after just a few days or a few weeks. It takes quite a bit of time to assess everything about it, go through all the nuances, figure out the pros and cons, or the things that you find are enjoyable about it, the things that you find are challenging about it, and weigh the odds of whether it ultimately is something you want to pursue. And so passion is something that really takes a long time to kindle into more of a spark or a fire, that desire that you have behind it. And then the other thing to keep in mind is that this is also the case with the things that are core values or your personal philosophy. You don't come up with those things overnight. And so as 2021 has not maybe gotten off to the same start that we had hoped it would be, with being bright and, things opening up more, they're actually closing back down more. Where I'm at in Ontario, everything's back in lockdown and it's a stay-at-home order where people are really supposed to avoid going out as much as possible, with the exception of, essential things like groceries or trips to the pharmacy or going for exercise. And the exercise component is definitely great. So hopefully people are using this time to find different ways to exercise and maybe adventure into different types of activities that they're going to develop a passion into over time. It could be a unique opportunity to look at things like that. But what we can also use this extra time we've sort of been given is for finding that stillness to reflect even more, look towards the future and see where your core values lie, where your identities and the things that you hold in your personal philosophy are all about. That's what we can kind of use some of this time for, so that as you start to set new goals, for a fact, or deep down that those things really resonate with you. Those things are going to be sustainable and you're going to have that much more success with those goals long term. So that's all I have for you today. I hope that you find this information helpful. Leave a comment below on whatever goals you've set for yourself or the things that are motivating you going into this new year. I'd love to engage with that and see how I can help you in any other way. And of course, as always, until next time, dream on and find your flow. But another way to look at it is intrinsic versus extrinsic. But another way to look at it is intrinsic versus extrinsic.